The alien warlords had never come across a planet like Earth before. To them, it was just another target in their endless quest for expansion throughout the galaxy. They had already dominated countless worlds, crushing species under the weight of their superior technology and tactical brilliance. Earth, they believed, was no different another primitive society too slow to match their advancements. As their massive fleet arrived in Earth's orbit, they observed the chaos below. The planet's defenses appeared laughable, a mix of outdated aircraft, crude missiles, and ground troops who barely understood the threat. The warlords, watching through their high-resolution displays, sneered at the disorganized human military struggling to mobilize. This, they thought, would end quickly like all their other conquests. They marveled at Earth's inhabitants, who naively believed their armies could still make a difference. Primitive, one of the lead commanders, muttered, standing tall with his hardened exoskeleton reflecting the dim command center light. They don't even have shield technology. They're still using ballistic weapons, nuclear energy. Pathetic, another warlord nodded, agreeing, good for morale, our troops could use some practice. Let them play with these toys. The commanders chuckled, convinced no human force could present a true challenge. To them, Earth was just a playground for their elite forces, a formality in their greater conquest. They saw no need to deploy their full strength, confident they'd crush resistance within days. Meanwhile, humanity scrambled, with nations across the globe attempting to defend themselves. Tanks moved through city streets, planes filled the skies, and hastily trained soldiers prepared for battle. Though they fought valiantly, their efforts proved futile. No missile could breach the alien shields, no tank shell could slow their advance. The aliens' technology was too far ahead, tearing through Earth's defenses like paper. Their ships loomed over cities, raining destruction with cold precision. It was clear to global leaders Earth was losing, and fast. But as the alien warlords gloated over their easy domination, they failed to notice someone smaller, deep in the mountains, watching through binoculars. He had seen it all before arrogant invaders, sure of their superiority, underestimating forces capable of bringing them down. He wasn't like the rest of the soldiers. This wasn't just another mission for him, it was survival. He didn't need tanks, jets, or missiles. This war would be won with tactics, not brute strength, something the warlords hadn't prepared for. The Green Beret crouched in the underbrush, blending into the surroundings, his eyes tracking alien patrols moving with mechanical precision, unaware of the danger hidden in the shadows. This was his element: stealth, surprise, sabotage. The aliens were masters of large-scale warfare, but they didn't know how to handle a lone operative who could strike from the shadows and vanish before they knew what hit them. For years, he had trained for missions like this. His body moved with the ease of experience, his mind calculating every possible outcome. The odds were against him, but that had never stopped him before. This wasn't just about information, it was about survival. He would make his first move subtly. If the warlords realized they were dealing with more than just human armies, they might take Earth seriously, and that couldn't happen yet. The Green Beret needed to buy time for the world to regroup and learn how to fight back. His first strike was at a communication relay deep within the enemy's encampment, a key link between the warlords and their ground forces. Under cover of darkness, he slipped through the perimeter. Alien patrols marched with precision, their sensors designed to detect large threats, not a single human with intimate knowledge of the terrain. Moving silently, bypassing guards, scaling walls, he entered the enemy's heart undetected. The relay stood ahead, its glow illuminating the area. With a few clicks of a tool, a well-placed explosive was set just enough to take it offline without leaving much evidence behind. As quietly as he had come, he disappeared. Minutes later, confusion erupted in the alien command center. "We've lost connection with the southern quadrant," a technician shouted, furiously working to restore the link. The commander stared at the screens, perplexed. "Send a team to investigate," one ordered. It's probably just a malfunction, but it wasn't a malfunction. The Green Beret had already moved to his next target, a small supply depot hidden in a nearby forest. While the aliens worked to fix what they thought was a technical glitch, he systematically cut off their resources one by one: ammunition stores, fuel depots, command terminals, each sabotaged in a way that looked accidental. Reports of strange disruptions began piling in, frustrating the warlords, but they still refused to believe a single human could be responsible. It had to be a system failure, or perhaps environmental factors. After all, no one had ever infiltrated their forces before. Why would this backwater planet be any different? But as the Green Beret continued his silent campaign, the alien commanders began noticing a pattern. These weren't random failures, someone was behind it. "We're being hunted," one warlord growled, stung by the thought that a human had slipped through their defenses. They still didn't understand the Green Beret wasn't fighting them head-on. He didn't need to. He was outthinking them, outmaneuvering them, using every advantage Earth had to offer. The forests and mountains became his weapons, masking his movements, setting traps the aliens couldn't see coming. For the first time, the warlords felt something new: uncertainty. Their forces were being chipped away, not by an army, but by a single man who fought with the intensity of their elite warriors, but with tactics they couldn't predict. As the Green Beret continued his relentless assault, one thing became clear: humanity wasn't beaten, they were just getting started. The mission briefing had been clear: infiltrate the alien command center and gather intelligence. But the Green Beret knew it was about more than just information, it was about survival. Earth needed time, and he was going to provide it, one way or another. The alien warlords, however, still dismissed the idea of any real threat. Their arrogance blinded them to the silent hunter now stalking their most secure installations. They had deployed their elite forces, warriors bred for combat, enhanced with the finest technology their empire could offer. They were faster, stronger, supposedly unbeatable. But none of that mattered in the wild. The Green Beret knew the terrain better than they ever could and used it to his advantage. He didn't engage them directly, there was no need. Instead, he laid traps subtle, deadly, perfectly timed. He manipulated the environment, creating distractions and forcing the aliens to react. And react they did poorly. Each time the alien forces moved to corner him, they found nothing but devastation. Ambushes left them confused, their numbers dwindling without even catching a glimpse of their target. The alien warriors, reliant on their advanced armor and sensors, were no match for a man who had mastered the art of vanishing into the landscape. The more they tried to track him, the more he led them into dead ends, into traps that flipped the roles of hunter and hunted. The warlords couldn't comprehend how one human could cause so much chaos. Their elite forces returned in smaller numbers, battered and humiliated. They reported strange incidents: explosions appearing from nowhere, trees rigged to collapse on patrols, entire squads wiped out without ever engaging an enemy. The commanders were growing impatient, their pride giving way to frustration. Is this what we've been reduced to? A game of hide and seek with a primitive, one commander spat, slamming his fist on the table. But for the Green Beret, it wasn't a game, it was war, fought on his terms. He didn't need overwhelming firepower or superior technology, he needed patience. And patience was something the warlords sorely lacked. The more they pushed, the more mistakes they made, and the Green Beret exploited each one, striking where they least expected. He understood their psychology better than they knew. The warlords were bound by honor, by a belief in their own invincibility. That was their weakness. They couldn't stand the idea that a single human was outsmarting them, and so they overcommitted. They sent more troops, spread their forces thin, exposing vulnerabilities they hadn't anticipated. The Green Beret didn't let up. Each strike was calculated, precise, designed to spread confusion and fear. He left no trace of himself, only the aftermath of his sabotage: ammunition depots exploding in the night, communication lines severed, supply chains destroyed. The alien commanders, once so confident in their victory, began pointing fingers at one another. Their overwhelming technological superiority meant nothing against an enemy who refused to fight the battle on their terms. As morale within their ranks began to crumble, the Green Beret pressed his advantage. He understood that the real fight wasn't just physical, it was psychological. The warlords were proud creatures, but now they were starting to doubt themselves. And with each mistake, he struck again harder, faster, until they had no choice but to acknowledge him. The warlords finally realized they were dealing with more than a simple human army. This was a tactical assault, calculated to bring them to their knees, and it was working. The Green Beret prepared for the final phase of his mission with quiet determination. He had disrupted their supply lines, sabotaged their communications, and sown fear among their ranks. Now it was time for the decisive blow. The warlords, sensing they were losing control, had fortified their command center, convinced that their superior numbers and technology would finally corner him. But they had underestimated him at every turn, and this time was no different. The plan was simple, but the execution had to be flawless. The Green Beret knew their weaknesses, the gaps in their defenses, and most importantly, their arrogance. The warlords, for all their strategic brilliance, still believed they could crush him with sheer force. But force wouldn't win this battle, strategy would. His advantage lay in surprise and outthinking them, not outgunning them. As he approached the alien command center, he observed their preparations. Patrols had increased, defenses layered with shields, and their most elite troops guarded the perimeter. To anyone else, it might have looked impenetrable. But the Green Beret saw the flaws, the rigidity of their structure, their over-reliance on technology. He moved carefully, staying out of sight as he advanced toward the facility. This wasn't about brute strength, it was about precision. One wrong move could tip them off, but the Green Beret had spent years perfecting the art of stealth. Tonight would be no different. His goal was clear: disable the alien command center and deal a blow that would cripple their entire operation. The aliens had prepared for an attack, but not for him. They expected a frontal assault or a large-scale infiltration. But the Green Beret operated on a different level. He bypassed their patrols, slipping between sensor fields, evading detection with ease. The Warlords had fortified against conventional tactics, but they couldn't defend themselves from what they didn't understand. He set his first charges near the facility's power generator, hidden carefully in the shadows. This wasn't just about taking out their command, it was about maximum disruption. The explosion would not only cripple their systems, but throw their forces into chaos. And while they scrambled to restore order, he would already be moving deeper into the base, dismantling their operations piece by piece. The tension was palpable, but the Green Beret thrived under pressure. Years of training had prepared him for this moment, and he was ready. The Warlords had made the fatal error of underestimating the resolve of a human soldier, and now they were about to pay the price. The charges detonated precisely as planned, plunging the alien command center into darkness. Alarms blared as the Warlords scrambled to regain control, but it was too late. The Green Beret was already inside. While the alien troops rushed to contain what they thought was a larger force, he systematically dismantled their command structure from within. Moving room by room, he disabled key systems, set traps for the soldiers pursuing him, and turned their fortress into a maze of confusion. The Warlords, panicking, watched their carefully laid plans unravel in the face of an enemy they couldn't see or predict. They had fortified their defenses for a direct confrontation, but the Green Beret wasn't fighting that kind of war. This was a war of attrition, and with each strike, he eroded their ability to fight back. By the time he reached the heart of the command center, the Warlords, so full of bravado, finally understood that brute force alone wouldn't win this battle. They had underestimated human ingenuity and persistence, and now they were paying the ultimate price. The final confrontation didn't unfold as the Warlords had anticipated. There was no grand battle, no dramatic clash of forces. Instead, it was a moment of clarity for the alien commanders, trapped in their arrogance. They finally grasped that their overwhelming technology and vast numbers had been rendered useless by a single human who had refused to fight on their terms. The Green Beret had outwitted them at every turn, systematically dismantling their command structure, sabotaging their operations, and chipping away at their forces without ever directly engaging them. As the Warlords scrambled to restore order, they were forced to acknowledge the unthinkable they were losing. Their soldiers, once confident in their invincibility, were scattered and demoralized. Their ships, once looming ominously over Earth, were now powerless as their systems failed one by one. The Green Beret had done what no one thought possible. He had turned the tide of the war. In the central control room, the alien commanders were frantic, shouting orders and trying to salvage what remained of their operation. But the damage had already been done. The systems were down, the chain of command was broken, and their forces were in disarray. The Green Beret had struck the final blow, crippling the heart of their invasion force. He didn't need to engage the Warlords directly. His mission was complete. Their empire's finest warriors had been outsmarted, their technology rendered useless by a single human who had refused to play by their rules. As the alien ships retreated into the dark void of space, the Warlords were left to grapple with a new reality. They had come to Earth expecting an easy conquest, only to be humbled by the resilience of a planet they had deemed primitive. The Green Beret had shattered their belief in their own superiority, proving that Earth wasn't just another backwater planet to be conquered, but a world that could fight back in ways they had never anticipated. The alien commanders, once so sure of their victory, now faced the harsh truth of their defeat. The Green Beret had not only disrupted their invasion, but he had exposed their greatest weakness, their inability to adapt to an enemy who fought with cunning and strategy rather than brute force. And that realization had cost them dearly. Back on Earth, the tide had finally turned. Nations that had once stood on the brink of annihilation now rallied in the face of the aliens' retreat. The human resistance, inspired by the Green Beret's success, began to strike back with renewed determination. Soldiers who had once believed the war was lost now saw that victory was possible. The Green Beret's guerrilla tactics, his precision strikes, and his ability to outthink the enemy had shown the world that the alien invaders were not invincible. But while the world celebrated, the Green Beret remained in the shadows, knowing that the war wasn't over yet. The alien warlords had retreated, but they had not been completely defeated. He knew they would regroup, re-strategize, and return with even more ferocity. And when they did, Earth had to be ready. He had done what needed to be done, but he wasn't looking for recognition or accolades. His name was already becoming a legend among the human forces, a symbol of hope and resilience. Stories of his feats spread quickly, of how one man had taken down the Empire's finest, outsmarting their most advanced technology and crippling their invasion plans. But for the Green Beret, this wasn't about glory. It was about survival. His mission wasn't just to defeat the invaders, it was to ensure that Earth would be prepared for whatever came next. He had given humanity a chance, but the fight was far from over. The alien warlords had learned a valuable lesson about human resilience, but they had not been destroyed. They would return to their empire, reassess their strategy, and prepare for another invasion. Next time, they wouldn't underestimate Earth. They would come back stronger, more prepared, and more determined than ever. But the Green Beret was ready for that. He knew that Earth's greatest defense wasn't its technology or its armies, it was its people. People who could adapt, who could fight with ingenuity and determination, and who would never give up. As the world began the long process of rebuilding, the Green Beret quietly went back to work. His mission wasn't over, and there would be more battles to fight. He had faced the worst the galaxy had to offer and emerged victorious, not through overwhelming power, but through patience, strategy, and the sheer will to survive. Now, as humanity united to rebuild their cities and lives, they knew that the war wasn't just about defeating the aliens, it was about proving that Earth could stand against any threat, no matter how advanced or powerful. The alien warlords had paid the price for their arrogance, and the galaxy was watching. Earth had shown that it wasn't a planet to be taken lightly, and the Green Beret's story would live on not just as a tale of survival, but as a reminder that, no matter the odds, humanity would always fight back. In the aftermath of the invasion, as alien forces were rounded up and their technology studied, a new awareness began to grow on Earth. The galaxy was vast, and Earth was no longer an isolated planet. The Green Beret had proven that humanity could hold its own against even the most advanced extraterrestrial forces, but there was more to come. The warlords had underestimated Earth once, but next time they would be prepared. And so would the Green Beret. For now, though, his mission was complete. The alien command center was in ruins, their forces in chaos, and their invasion plans shattered. The Green Beret had accomplished the impossible, but there was no triumph in his heart. This war had been about survival, about doing whatever it took to protect the planet, and that was a job that was never truly finished. As the world rebuilt and looked to the future, the Green Beret remained vigilant, knowing that the fight wasn't over. Someone had to be ready when the next threat came, and he would be there, standing in the gap, ready to defend Earth once more. The alien warlords had underestimated humanity, and it had cost them everything. They had thought themselves invincible, but the Green Beret had shown them that strength wasn't just about firepower or technology, it was about resilience, cunning, and the will to survive. As the last of the alien ships disappeared into space, the Green Beret stood quietly, knowing that while this battle was over, the war was far from won. The galaxy had taken notice of Earth, and if they came back, they would find a planet ready to fight, no matter the cost. With the alien warlords in full retreat, Earth entered a fragile phase of recovery. Cities lay in ruins, governments scrambled to maintain order, and people mourned their losses. But there was also a newfound strength, a collective will to rebuild and rise stronger than ever. Around the globe, nations began cooperating in ways previously thought impossible, united by the shared experience of survival against a common enemy. The scars of war were deep, but so was the resolve to ensure that the invasion would never happen again. The Green Beret, meanwhile, remained a ghost. His name was whispered among soldiers and survivors alike, a symbol of what humanity could achieve when pushed to its limits. But he sought no fame, no accolades. For him, this was never about personal glory, it was about duty. While the world around him celebrated their victory, he remained focused on what lay ahead. He knew that Earth had won this battle, but the war was far from over. The alien warlords would not simply vanish into the darkness. They would regroup, rebuild their forces, and plan their return. They had learned a painful lesson about humanity's resilience, but they were a formidable foe with vast resources across the galaxy. Next time, they wouldn't underestimate Earth or its people. The Green Beret was certain of that, and it weighed heavily on him. At military installations and secret government facilities, scientists and engineers studied the alien technology left behind, trying to reverse engineer it to give humanity an edge. Weapons, energy shields, propulsion systems, each discovery brought the promise of a more advanced defense network, but also the unsettling reminder that they were still playing catch-up. The alien forces had been far ahead in technology, and while the Green Beret had outwitted them, future invaders might not be so easily outmaneuvered. Back in the shadows, the Green Beret continued his work, preparing for the day when Earth would once again face the threat of invasion. He trained quietly, honing his skills, always staying one step ahead, always thinking of what the next challenge would be. He knew that humanity's best defense was not its weapons, but its adaptability, the ability to learn, to change, and to fight in ways the enemy didn't expect. The world's attention was now focused on rebuilding, on preparing defenses, and on forming alliances with other nations to stand stronger as a united planet. Military forces were restructured, and new coalitions were formed, but behind it all was the silent acknowledgement that Earth's greatest threat still lay in the vast unknown of space. The Green Beret had shown them how to fight smart, not just hard. He had proven that strength wasn't enough, that cunning, patience, and the will to survive could tip the scales, even against a superior foe. But deep in space, far beyond the reach of Earth's sensors, the alien warlords were not idle. The news of their defeat had spread through their empire like wildfire, shaking the foundations of their once unchallenged dominance. Leaders across their vast network of conquered worlds were baffled, their pride stung by the idea that a single human had brought one of their greatest campaigns to its knees. In secret war councils, the warlords plotted their return. They knew they couldn't risk another failure this time. Their strategy would have to be perfect. They would study Earth, dissect its weaknesses, and prepare for a new kind of war. The next invasion wouldn't rely solely on brute force. It would be calculated, relentless, designed to exploit every vulnerability humanity had. But what they didn't fully grasp was that Earth itself had changed. The invasion had galvanized its people in ways the warlords couldn't comprehend. Nations that had once been adversaries now stood united, focused on a singular goal: the survival of the human race. The Green Beret had lit the spark of resistance, showing the world that they could fight back, no matter the odds. That spirit was spreading, not just among soldiers, but among civilians, scientists, and leaders who had seen firsthand what humanity was capable of when pushed to the brink. While the warlords prepared for their next move, the Green Beret continued his quiet mission. He moved from one remote location to another, training new soldiers in the art of unconventional warfare, teaching them how to fight like he had, using their surroundings, thinking ahead, and never underestimating the enemy. He understood that Earth's true strength lay in its unpredictability. No matter how advanced the alien forces were, no matter how overwhelming their firepower, they couldn't predict the determination of a species that refused to surrender. The days turned into months, and while Earth rebuilt, the Green Beret remained vigilant. His actions had already changed the course of the war, but he knew that his role was far from over. He wasn't just preparing himself, he was preparing humanity for the battles yet to come. He had seen the arrogance of the warlords, their reliance on technology, and their belief in their own superiority. He had exploited those weaknesses once, and he was determined to do it again if the need arose. As the months passed, reports began to filter in from deep space, whispers of alien fleets gathering, of strange signals detected at the edges of the solar system. The world's leaders knew it was only a matter of time before the next wave of the invasion began. But this time, they were ready. Earth was no longer the fractured, unprepared planet it had once been. They had learned, adapted, and fortified their defenses. The Green Beret watched quietly from the shadows, always prepared, always waiting. He knew the alien warlords would return, and when they did, they would find a world transformed, a world that had learned from its mistakes, a world that now understood what it took to survive. And just as before, the Green Beret would be there, ready to defend Earth once more, with all the cunning and determination that had made him the silent hero of the first invasion. The galaxy was vast, and Earth was just one planet among many. But the Green Beret had proven that even the smallest force, when fighting with heart and strategy, could stand against the most powerful enemy. The next battle would be harder, the stakes higher, but he was ready. Earth was ready. And this time, the Warlords would not be facing a divided planet. They would be facing a united force, prepared for anything the galaxy could throw at them. The Green Beret had shown them what humanity was capable of, and now the galaxy would never forget.